Have you ever wondered what the giant aircraft of the past were really like, back before modern technology completely transformed aviation? How did machines that big, heavy, and sometimes experimental manage to cross oceans, carry unbelievable loads, and even change the course of history? The truth is, some vintage aircraft were so massive and so rare that today they almost seem impossible to believe. You're going on a journey through some of the largest and rarest old aircraft ever created. Legendary machines that pushed limits, broke expectations, and helped shape aviation as we know it. Stay with me, because number one on this list is not just big, it is something that challenges almost every idea of what an aircraft can be. North American B-25 Mitchell. In the early 1940s, right in the middle of World War II, the B-25 Mitchell emerged in the United States as one of the most versatile medium bombers ever built. Produced by North American Aviation, it quickly gained respect for its ability to operate on different fronts, and even for rough, improvised airstrips. Under its wings, it carried two Wright R2600 radial engines, each producing around 1,700 horsepower. These 14-cylinder engines gave the aircraft enough power to reach speeds close to 275 miles per hour, while still delivering reliable performance even when heavily loaded. Its setup used two 14-cylinder engines and fully manual control systems, demanding skill, timing, and teamwork from the crew to keep the aircraft stable and accurate during critical missions. It used retractable landing gear and reinforced wings, giving it good lift and stability at medium altitudes, even while facing turbulence, enemy fire, and the pressure of combat. Visually, the B-25 made a strong impression with its rugged fuselage, glass nose, and wide wings. It was the kind of aircraft that looked powerful, even when parked on the runway. The sound of its engines was deep, strong, and constant, filling the cabin with vibration. Every movement could be felt by the crew, turning each flight into a physical experience. In practice, it was widely used for bombing, reconnaissance, and strategic missions. It became world-famous after taking part in the Doolittle Raid, one of the boldest operations in military aviation history. Over time, the B-25s became a symbol of toughness and versatility, remembered to this day as one of the most dependable aircraft of its generation. Some restored examples still fly at airshows, keeping the memory of one of the most important machines of World War II alive. And if this one already showed serious strength and presence in the sky, the next aircraft proves that size is not always just about power. Sometimes, it is also about innovation. Ford Trimotor. The Ford Trimotor appeared in 1926, built by the Ford Motor Company in the United States. It was born in an era when commercial aviation was still finding its footing, and many people still needed to be convinced that getting on an airplane could be safer than it looked. At around 49.5 feet long, with a wingspan of about 77.8 feet, it stood out because of its corrugated metal body. That ribbed skin became its visual signature and gave the aircraft an industrial look, almost like a flying rail car. Most versions used three radial engines, usually with 9 cylinders each, producing a combined output of roughly 900 to 1,200 horsepower, depending on the configuration. The idea behind using 3 engines was simple and smart. If one failed, the aircraft still had 2 more to help keep it in the air. Its top speed was around 150 miles per hour, with a more comfortable cruising speed near 105 to 120 miles per hour. Torque and 0 to 60 times were not common figures for aircraft of that era, and the Trimotor was not built for speed. It was built for reliability. The aircraft did not have a transmission like a car. The pilot controlled engine power with throttles, and the landing gear was fixed, wide, and rugged. There were no retractable wheels or overly refined aerodynamic lines. The focus was on landing on simple dirt or grass strips and getting the job done. Inside, it had an almost railroad-like feel. Passengers traveled in a narrow cabin with loud noise, constant vibration, and small windows. But for people at the time, that was luxury and modernity. It gave passengers the feeling of crossing long distances in a way that had once seemed reserved for only a few. The Ford Trimotor carried passengers, cargo, mail, and even served in remote regions. It helped prove that aircraft could be practical tools, not just risky machines for adventurous pilots. Many people called it the Tin Goose because of its metal body and unique way of flying. Today, seeing a preserved trimotor is like looking at the birth of modern commercial aviation. It did not need to be fast to be important. It only needed to be reliable, rare, and unforgettable. But now, we move up to a machine built to operate in one of the most difficult places in the world, the deck of an aircraft carrier. Grumman C-2A Greyhound. The Grumman C-2A Greyhound entered service in the 1960s, built by Grumman in the United States. It was created for a very specific mission, carrying cargo, parts, mail, and passengers between land bases and aircraft carriers operating far out at sea. It is about 56.7 feet long, with a wingspan of 80.7 feet and a maximum takeoff weight close to 54,000 pounds. For a carrier-based transport aircraft, it is large, tall, and bulky, especially when seen folding its wings on the crowded deck of an aircraft carrier. Power comes from two Allison T56 turboprop engines, each producing around 4,600 horsepower. These are strong, reliable engines also used in other famous military aircraft. The setup uses two engines with large propellers that deliver immediate thrust at low speeds. Its top speed is around 340 miles per hour, with a range of roughly 1,500 miles. In turboprop aircraft, torque and 0 to 60 times are not usually discussed the way they are with ground vehicles. But the aircraft needs quick response to take off and land in extremely limited space. It does not use a transmission. Control comes through the power levers and propeller adjustments. Thrust is generated by the two engines, and the landing gear is reinforced to handle hard carrier landings, with a tail hook that catches the arresting cables on deck. Visually, the C-2A looks like a mix between a compact cargo plane and a naval workhorse. Its high nose, wide fuselage, and folding wings make it clear that it was designed to survive in a harsh environment, with strong winds, salt air, limited space, and constant operations. It solves a vital problem: keeping an aircraft carrier supplied without forcing it to return to shore. A single part carried by a Greyhound could put another combat aircraft back into service. And if this one is already rare because of the difficult environment it works in, the next aircraft takes the story into a huge and often forgotten world of maritime patrol. Consolidated PB-4Y2 Privateer. The Consolidated PB-4Y2 Privateer appeared in 1943, built by Consolidated Aircraft in the United States. It was based on the B-24 Liberator, but adapted to patrol oceans, hunt submarines, and watch over sea routes during long missions. It measured about 74.5 feet long, with a wingspan of 110 feet, and a maximum takeoff weight of around 64,000 pounds. It was large, long, and had the presence of a heavy bomber, but with the soul of a naval sentinel. Power came from four Pratt & Whitney R1830 radial engines, each with 14 cylinders and about 1,200 horsepower. Its top speed was close to 300 miles per hour, with a range of roughly 2,800 miles. It did not use a transmission like a ground vehicle. The pilot controlled everything through the engine throttles and propeller adjustments. The landing gear was retractable, and thrust came from four propellers pulling the aircraft through the air. Its look was intimidating, with a long fuselage, a massive single tail, and multiple defensive positions. The sound of its four radial engines was heavy and constant, perfect for a machine designed to watch the sea for hours. In practice, the privateer protected routes, searched for submarines, and performed naval reconnaissance. Even though it was less famous than other wartime aircraft, it became a rare and respected piece of naval aviation history. If you're enjoying this journey through rare and giant vintage aircraft, go ahead and hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell, because it really helps this video reach more people who love historic machines. And if this one already had the presence of a true ocean sentinel, the next aircraft arrives with elegance and the presence of a presidential plane. Lockheed VC-121A Constellation. Unlike the more rugged warplanes on this list, the Lockheed VC-121A Constellation arrived with a rare mix of elegance and power. Built by Lockheed in the United States, it appeared in the late 1940s as a military and special transport version of the famous Constellation. It measured around 116 feet long, had a wingspan of about 123 feet, and a maximum takeoff weight close to 106,000 pounds. Its design was unmistakable, with a long fuselage, a sleek nose, and that triple tail layout that made the aircraft look sophisticated, even while sitting on the ramp. Power came from 4 Wright R3350 radial engines, each with 18 cylinders and roughly 2,200 horsepower. Its top speed could exceed 310 miles per hour, with a range of more than 3,100 miles, depending on load and configuration. It did not use a transmission like a land vehicle. Power was controlled through the engine throttles and propeller adjustments. The landing gear was retractable, and thrust came from 4 propellers, giving the Constellation a deep, elegant, and very distinctive sound. Inside, the VC-121A could be configured for VIP transport, offering more comfort than most military aircraft of its time. Some units carried important officials, and the Constellation became a symbol of an era when flying still had glamour, radial engine noise, and the feeling of history in the air. Today, it is remembered as one of the most beautiful aircraft ever built, a rare machine that combined presence, luxury, and classic engineering. But if this one impresses with elegance, the next aircraft comes in with the full weight of war and became one of the most legendary bombers of the 20th century. B-29 Superfortress. When the Boeing B-29 Superfortress appeared in 1944, built by Boeing in the United States, it represented a massive leap in military aviation. It was a heavy bomber designed to fly higher, farther, and carry more destructive power than many aircraft of the time could even approach. It measured around 99 feet long, had a wingspan of 141 feet, and a maximum takeoff weight of more than 133,000 pounds. For the 1940s, it was a true giant, with an imposing fuselage, a pressurized cabin, and advanced systems that placed the B-29 in a class of its own. Power came from 4 Wright R3350 radial engines, each with 18 cylinders and about 2,200 horsepower. Its top speed was close to 357 miles per hour, with a range of roughly 3,200 miles, depending on bomb load and fuel. It did not have a transmission like a car. The pilot controlled power through throttles and propeller adjustments. The landing gear was retractable, and thrust came from 4 huge propellers pulling a heavy, complex aircraft full of electrical and defensive systems. The sound of the B-29 was powerful, with 4 radial engines working together and filling the air with vibration. Inside, it was more advanced than many of its rivals, with pressurized crew areas, something rare and extremely important for high-altitude missions. In practice, the Superfortress left a deep mark on World War II and continued serving in later military operations. It became a museum piece, a symbol of air power, and a reminder of an era when size, range, and technology helped change history. And if this one already seemed far ahead of its time, the next aircraft was an experiment as strange as it was ambitious. Bartini Beriev VVA-14. Now we enter one of the strangest and boldest projects in vintage aviation. The Bartini Beriev VVA-14 was developed in the Soviet Union during the 1970s, designed by Robert Bartini with support from Beriev, right in the middle of the Cold War. The idea was to create an aircraft capable of locating and sighting submarines, operating over long distances, and even close to the surface of the sea. It measured about 85 feet long, had a wingspan of roughly 98 feet, and an estimated maximum takeoff weight close to 115,000 pounds. It was not the largest aircraft on this list, but visually, it looked like an experimental machine from another world, with a wide fuselage, thick wings, and a shape that mixed aircraft, flying boat, and military laboratory. Its main power came from two Soloviev D-30 turbofan engines, each producing around 15,400 pounds of thrust. The project also planned additional engines for vertical takeoff, but that part never worked the way Soviet engineers had hoped, making the VVA-14 even rarer and more mysterious. Its top speed was around 470 miles per hour, with an estimated range of more than 1,200 miles. It did not use a transmission like a ground vehicle, and power was controlled through the engine throttles. The landing gear was retractable, designed for runway testing and experimental operations. The look of the VVA-14 was the kind of thing that could make anyone stop and stare. The cockpit seemed almost lost inside that huge structure, and the engines had a strong, sharp, modern sound for the era, very different from the classic rumble of old propeller aircraft. In practice, it never became the operational weapon the military wanted. One of the few surviving examples ended up preserved in Russia, in a heavily deteriorated state, almost like a forgotten relic from a technological race with no limits. The Bartini Beriev VVA-14 remains proof that vintage aviation also had projects that were extremely bold, rare, and difficult to explain at first glance. And if this one already seems strange enough, the next aircraft is a bulging cargo giant created to swallow massive rocket parts. Super Guppy Cargo. Few vintage aircraft grab attention at first sight like the Super Guppy. It appeared in the 1960s, developed in the United States by Aerospace Lines, using heavily modified structures derived from the Boeing 377 Stratocruiser. It measured about 144 feet long, had a wingspan of around 156 feet, and a maximum takeoff weight in the range of 170,000 pounds. But what really made it shocking was its huge rounded fuselage, built to swallow cargo that simply could not fit inside conventional aircraft. The best-known version used 4 Allison 501 turboprop engines, each producing around 4,600 horsepower. Its top speed was close to 285 miles per hour, with a range of roughly 2,000 miles, depending on the cargo being carried. It did not use a transmission like a ground vehicle. Power was controlled through the engine throttles and propellers. The landing gear was retractable, and the big solution was its hinged nose, which opened to allow oversized cargo to be loaded inside. The Super Guppy had a look that was almost impossible to forget. It was bulky, tall, disproportional, and brilliant at the same time. The sound of its 4 turboprops matched the image perfectly. A slow, heavy, absolutely necessary giant. It was essential for transporting space program components, including parts used by NASA. Without aircraft like this, moving giant components across long distances would have been much slower and far more complicated. And if the Super Guppy already looked too big to be real, the next aircraft was built to carry tanks, helicopters, and troops all over the world. Lockheed C-5A Galaxy. When the Lockheed C-5A Galaxy entered service in 1970, built by Lockheed in the United States, it changed the scale of military transport. It was a strategic cargo aircraft designed to move vehicles, helicopters, troops, and massive loads to almost any part of the world. It measured around 247 feet long, had a wingspan of about 223 feet, and a maximum takeoff weight of more than 750,000 pounds. Even standing still, it looked like a building with wings, with a tall fuselage, a massive tail, and doors that allowed loading from both the front and the rear. Power came from 4 General Electric TF-39 turbofan engines, each producing around 43,000 pounds of thrust. Its top speed was close to 530 miles per hour, with a loaded range of more than 3,100 miles, depending on the mission. Power was controlled through the engine throttles, and the landing gear used multiple wheel assemblies to distribute its enormous weight. The aircraft could also kneel, lowering its fuselage to make loading heavy vehicles easier. Inside, the C-5A was basically a flying warehouse. The sound of its engines was deep, powerful, and continuous, and its presence on the runway made smaller aircraft look like toys. It could carry tanks, trucks, helicopters, and more. and huge volumes of military cargo. Despite technical challenges in its early versions, the Galaxy became a legend of heavy air transport. And if this giant already feels like the limit of size, the next machine goes even further. A colossal aircraft designed to fly almost glued to the surface of the water. Ekranoplan. At the top of the list is the Ekranoplan, especially the gigantic KM, developed by the Soviet Union in the 1960s. It was not a normal aircraft, but a ground effect machine designed to fly very low over water using the cushion of lift created between the wings and the surface. The KM measured about 302 feet long, had a wingspan of roughly 123 feet, and an estimated maximum weight of more than 1.1 million pounds. It was so large that when it was spotted in reconnaissance images, it received the nickname Caspian Sea Monster. Power came from 10 Dobrynin VD7 turbojet engines, each producing around 28,000 pounds of thrust. It could move at around 310 miles per hour, skimming just a few feet above the water, with a presence that mixed aircraft, ship, and heavy military machine. It did not use a transmission like a ground vehicle. Power was controlled through the engine throttles, and its operation depended on ground effect, which allowed it to carry massive weight efficiently while flying close to the surface. Visually, it was absurd. A huge fuselage, engines concentrated near the front, and a silhouette that seemed to dominate the sea. The sound of 10 engines must have turned everything around it into one continuous roar, as if an entire military base were moving across the water. The Ekranoplan was imagined for fast military transport, patrol, and possible attack missions. Very few old machines ever reached this level of size, boldness, and rarity. That is why it closes the list as one of the most impressive creations in aviation history. These vintage aircraft show that size and rarity are not just numbers on a spec sheet. Each one was born to solve a massive challenge, whether that meant crossing oceans, watching over sea routes, carrying giant components, transporting troops, or pushing engineering to a limit most people could barely imagine. From the B-25 Mitchell to the gigantic Ekranoplan, we saw machines with completely different stories, but all of them had something in common: presence, boldness, and the kind of impact that makes any aviation fan stop and look twice. These are not just old aircraft. They are flying chapters of history, made of metal, noise, risk, genius, and serious engineering courage from an era when every major project had the potential to change aviation forever. Now tell me in the comments, which one of these giants would you most like to see up close? Which one had the most impressive look in your opinion? And which aircraft on this list did you already know before watching this video? If you enjoy this kind of content, go ahead and hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell. That is very important for the growth of the channel, because it shows YouTube that this content is relevant, helps the video reach more people, and strengthens this community of historic machine enthusiasts. Because every week, there's a new video about some of the most incredible vehicles ever created. I'll see you in the next video.